While we're on our healing journey, we need time to calibrate. We need time to practice the lessons we've learned and really ground into the new version of ourselves. In this episode, we talk about the calibration period. Welcome to the Abundance Hack Show, Season 4, where we are focusing on mastery. The last 3 seasons, I gave you the information. Now we're focusing on integrating it into our lives and embodying it. If you are ready to master your thoughts, emotions, and patterns to feel whole, fulfilled, and really grounded in who you are without dimming your shine so you can live the abundant life that you truly desire, then you are in the right place. Hey M&Ms, thank you for tuning in to the Abundance Hack Show. What are you manifesting in your life today? I had the intention on doing this episode about radical self-love. But I had a therapy session today and we got so deep, and I just really thought about that period, that in-between period of, okay, I notice when I have these toxic habits or these toxic thought patterns and I'm nipping them in the bud, but I haven't fully stepped into the new version of myself. And it's still, I'm going to use the word clunky. I was talking to an old friend of mine that I've known for like 20 years. And we were talking about this process of going through therapy and healing and growing and transforming. And once you start that process, it's a little bit clunky until you really settle into your new flow. And when I say that out loud, the vision that comes to mind is like a deer, like Bambi, trying to walk, and it's a little awkward because you're just learning to walk. So you're just learning to walk in your new path, your new empowered divine path. And that period can be a little awkward. So anytime you're doing shadow work, inner child work, parts work. So when I say parts work, this goes back to fragmentation. If you haven't listened to that episode, it is a game changer. So definitely go and check that out. But like Teal Swan, for example, calls it parts work. So it's integrating all of your parts, the parts that have been suppressed, dismissed, denied, the parts that you felt were unlovable and you didn't feel like people in your life or society would accept these parts of you. So as you're doing this deep inner work, there's a metamorphosis or chrysalis period where you're no longer a caterpillar, but you're not quite a butterfly yet that can fly. And so that in-between phase is what I consider the calibration period. This is you sorting through your growth, sorting through the lessons and implementing them into your life, embodying the lessons and really making sure that you are letting them sink in. So there's a lot of people that get addicted to healing. They get addicted to healing, but they don't give themselves time to actually embody what the healing stands for. Because I think healing has become a new thing. Everyone wants to meditate and be mindful, but there's a lot of times we go through the motions. So kind of just like life, like that rat race of life, checking all the boxes, go to school, get a degree, meet a person, get into a relationship, get married, have a baby, get a house with a white picket fence and a dog. People go through the motions, but they're not truly embodying the fulfillment that it's supposed to actually bring. So giving yourself time and grace to really embody the lessons and the growth and really sit with and be with this version of yourself. Sit and be with your different parts. And if you are integrating parts that you thought were unlovable, let me just tell you, you are going to need some time to calibrate, because one of the parts that I've been working on integrating, and I'm going to try really hard not to get emotional, you guys. I am having like massive vulnerability hangover after this therapy session, but this is why I created this podcast. It's to share with you all my journey and hopefully give you courage to keep going when you feel like you want to quit, because sometimes we dig deep and we open up Pandora's box and you're like, "Oh shit, there's some deep pain here and I don't want to visit this. I don't want to deal with this right now. Can we just stop?" There's been so many times, like, I know we're getting deep every time I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to quit therapy for a little while. But I share my journey with you. One, it's so therapeutic for me. And two, to let people know that you are not alone. Like, we are in a time right now where so many people are hurting. So many people are emotionally distraught and depressed and high anxiety. And we're starving for nurturing. We're starving for support. We're starving for affection. We want to be seen and heard. And during a society of social media where we're actually seen on Instagram and Facebook and Insta stories all the time, we're not actually really being seen and actually really being heard. It's crazy. So it's causing so much inner turmoil, and a lot of people are numbing. They're numbing with drugs, alcohol, video games, sex, freaking CBD, like all these things that we're using to avoid feeling the feelings. And when you feel the feelings, although it is painful as fuck, when you feel the feelings, it allows you to figure out, okay, what is this triggering in me? And usually it's something from our childhood or some type of traumatic event in our lives. And we don't want to feel those feelings, so we numb. But what we're doing is we are stuffing more pain, more shame, more guilt, more embarrassment, more disappointment, more resentment under the rug, in the backs of our closets. And what happens is that turns into a physical ailment. It turns into chronic pain. It turns into illness and disease. So that is why I am doing the work that I'm doing, because I want to help people navigate this journey of facing the things that are hurting us. A lot of people are hurting, and our nervous systems are not regulated right now. After going through a worldwide pandemic, there's going to be a long period of healing that needs to happen. So if we're already on edge from things that are happening in the world, little things that happen in our lives, a breakup, a divorce, our car breaking down, can send us over the edge. So it's really important to understand that healing is a process. It's a journey. The calibration period, like, I feel like no one talks about this. And with therapy, when I started therapy, I was doing every other week. And I'm like, well, what do I do in the in-between times? You're working on integrating all these parts, but when this part flares up that I feel like is unlovable and people don't accept her, what do I do? If I can't talk to you for another week or two, like, what do I do in the in-between time? You know, like I'm integrating this part. So now she's, kind of in the driver's seat because we dug her up, but now I'm showing this part and I'm losing people in my life. So what happens is it winds up validating in your brain that, see, this is why I hid the part in the first place, because she's not lovable and people won't accept her and she runs people away. And so that period of like, okay, I'm going to be who I am, but then you be who you are, and then someone is like, I don't know about this. Then you're like, fuck. Well, I'm being who I am, but I'm losing people in a process. Relationships are falling away, and sometimes you're like, as you go through your healing journey, your interests change and things you want to do change. So then it impacts the people that you're hanging out with and the things that you really don't find joy in anymore, but you want to hang on to these connections and these friendships. And so it's that really uncomfortable in between limbo, chrysalis metamorphosis phase where like you no longer can hang out with the caterpillars, but you're not quite there to hang out with the butterflies just yet. And that period is hard. And if you learn nothing from me, I want you to know that in that hard phase, that is where you have to dig deep in the depths of your soul and keep going. You have no idea how many times I resorted back to the old me before I started this like deep healing journey. Like I want to cling to these friendships. I want to cling to these people. I want to cling to these bad habits because they're what I know and this is how it's been and this feels safe. Even if it's not what I want, it's safe because it's known. The unknown is scary. And so there's a quote from Marianne Williamson that I love because she in one of her books, Enchanted Love, she says, love will crack your heart wide open. And I was like, ooh, no, thank you. Like, I don't want anything to crack my heart wide open, but it's part of the process. And if you don't allow love and healing to crack your heart open, you're going to attract superficial relationships. And that's friendships, that's partnerships, that's even marriage. You think just because someone gets married, they have a deep, meaningful connection? No, not at all. Not in the least bit. So if you're someone who really craves that depth, you have to allow your heart to be open. So the quote from Marianne Williamson says, even in the midst of fear and suffering, keep your heart open. This will invoke a miracle. That shit gives me chills. Like it literally gives me chills because it's like we find ourselves in pain. We find ourselves in a state of fear or suffering. And I don't really like the word suffering, but like there's a certain hopelessness that comes along with feeling lonely. Like there's a lot of people that feel lonely and they feel like no one gets me, no one understands me, no one sees me. And maybe they don't name it. I name my things, thanks Brene Brown. I name what I'm feeling, and sometimes people don't name it. They just feel hopeless. And if you're someone who feels lonely often, or you feel hopeless or despair often, that is suffering. So even in the midst of fear and suffering, keep your heart open. This will invoke a miracle. It is the hardest thing to do, to keep your heart open after it's been broken. Because the second someone disappoints you, the second someone hurts you, the second something goes wrong or someone rejects you, or if you feel they abandoned you, it validates the fear. And so you're like, see, this is why I don't date. See, this is why I don't open up to people. See, this is why I don't love. This is why I don't show this sensitive part in me, because of situations like this. And it validates the fear. And so in that moment, you have to make the choice to choose a different perspective and still be loving, still be caring, still be vulnerable, still show up. If I haven't learned anything through this process, so you guys, I have done years of inner work. I've had an intimacy coach. I have had the Brene Brown program, focusing a lot on vulnerability. I've done trauma training, all of this, the work and everything that I've gone through with like healing my chakras through sound healing, like years of inner work. And one thing that I will share with you that I struggle with is like, okay, well, I'm doing all this work. So like, why are people like not being amazing towards me? I'm like this awesome communicator and I'm speaking my truth and I'm communicating my needs and desires. So like, why are my relationships not getting better? Why do I not have these deep connections that my soul is craving? And here's the thing that I had to realize. Just because you communicate well doesn't mean that other people want to communicate well. Just because you want deep connections doesn't mean other people want deep connections. Just because you are comfortable being vulnerable doesn't mean other people are comfortable being vulnerable. And so I had to realize that, because my way of resorting back to old patterns was saying like, okay, well, I feel like I'm doing all the things. So like, why are things not getting better? And it's really having patience during that calibration period. And if relationships fall away, allowing them to fall away, honoring the fact that your interests have changed. And that's okay. And so I think we're all on our own journey and we're all healing in some type of way, but we're going to be healing at different paces and we're going to go about things a little different, and we're not always going to get it right. So some people are going to retreat back to old ways, and that's okay. It happens. It happens. And I obviously always remind you, be gentle with yourself, but we can't force people to heal with us. And this is one of the biggest things that I've had to learn. We can't force people to heal with us. And so clinging to relationships when the other person isn't growing or healing at the same rate, because I believe we all are. I believe that we're going through a collective healing, but everyone's healing process and journey is different. So if you allow someone to slow down your healing process so you can stay in that space with them, you're doing yourself a disservice. You're doing yourself a disservice. And it feels so painful to witness relationships falling away and things shifting. And like, you have to, really think about the metamorphosis phase. When that caterpillar goes into that chrysalis phase and they're in this tight little, bubble, we'll just say bubble, they're probably like, what the fuck? My life is over. Like, I'm dead. That's it. This freaking metamorphosis process like took me out. I'm dead. It's dark in here. It's tight. Like, what is going on? So just think about that process. And so I believe that we go through something very similar. So that dark night of the soul is stripping away everything that we knew so we can transform into the best version of ourselves. So we can transform into the person that we are meant to be. And does everyone go through a dark night of the soul? Who knows? One of the things that I've realized, because I've lived in 7 different states, I've traveled the world, I've met people of all calibers from, I was born in New York, so I've met people from the hood that, their hood to freaking billionaires, like I have met so many different types of people, and no matter who it is, they struggle with something. Everyone's struggles are different, but they struggle with something. And so I think that it's easy to be like, oh, I'm going through a dark night of the soul. It's just me. And, woe is me. And like, life is so hard for me. But I know so many people that have their own challenges. And we definitely should not compare challenges, because it serves no purpose. We're doing a disservice to ourselves if we're comparing suffering. Like, comparative suffering is like literally the worst thing that you can do, but it's easy to do to dig yourself deeper in a hole. Like, oh, it's harder for me because I'm Black, or it's harder for me because I'm gay, or it's harder for me because I'm Latina, or it's harder for me because I have kids. It's harder for me because I was in the military and I got injured. Like, it's easy to go down that dark rabbit hole, but we have to nip it in the bud. These are toxic thought patterns to keep us in this dark space. And so anytime you find yourself comparing suffering, nip it in the bud. Nip it in the bud. And the fastest way to shift that is with gratitude. Start looking at, well, at least I have this, or at least, I'm good at this, or I'm grateful for this. I'm breathing, I'm healthy, I'm alive. Like whatever you have to be grateful for. Anytime you find yourself comparing your suffering to someone else's suffering, shift it to gratitude. And if you can't, because sometimes we have momentum built up around I'm a stockpiler. I talked about this on a previous episode. I am a stockpiler. So when something's wrong, I start piling all the things on top of it that are wrong. That is one of my toxic patterns that I nip it in the bud. The second I find myself doing that, I'm like, nope. And I shift that energy to gratitude. And if I can't shift it to gratitude, I take a nap. It's the fastest way to stop the momentum. If you have negative momentum, so think about, a train. This train is going, and it's picking up speed. Sometimes it's hard to stop the negative momentum. So the easiest way to stop the negative momentum is just take a nap. Because when you fall asleep, your body, your nervous system relaxes, and it allows you to release whatever resistance and negative momentum that's happening. You don't have as much resistance when you're sleeping. So that's what I say. When you have that negative momentum and you're going down that rabbit hole and it's getting darker and darker, take a nap. Just take a nap. Like, do yourself a favor and take a nap. And then usually when you wake up, you have a little bit more of a level head. So first, try gratitude. Try to shift to gratitude, and not from like a spiritually bypassing place, because we have to get to neutrality before we get to acceptance, and we have to get to acceptance before we get to joy, love, or peace. So be gentle with yourself. Don't, be like, oh my God, I love my life. Like, I'm not saying say like fake affirmations that are not true, because we don't want to lie to ourselves. Our bodies won't allow us to lie to ourselves. So if you're feeling crappy and you're like, I love my life, your body's going to be like, not quite, So making sure that you feel the gratitude in your body. Don't just go through the motions. And that's what I'm saying about this whole healing journey. There's a lot of people that are just going through the motions. They're memorizing the lessons and they can spew off all of the things, but are they really giving themselves time to calibrate and integrate and embody? A lot of them aren't. And I'm not obviously knocking anyone, because this is for me too. Like when you get to a space where you're like, oh shoot, like now I'm putting this into play. I just had my heart broken, and I could resort back to being closed off and guarded and armor up, or I can choose to remain open and keep loving and keep being sweet and keep being hopeful. And I think that being hopeful is kind of hard these days with what's going on in the world. And so really getting back to that place of like not everyone is suffering, and obviously there's different degrees of suffering. There are people happy in the world, and it is okay to be happy. Oh my God, you guys, I posted this yesterday. I saw this post that said, this literally was like the most important post that I have come across on social media. It said, don't wait for things to be easy, or don't wait for things to be easy again to be happy. I think that's what it said. Don't wait for things to be easy to be happy. And I was like, oh my God, I needed to hear that. Like, that is what I needed to hear, because I've had, here it is. You can't wait until life isn't hard anymore to be happy. So that's That's exactly what it said. I just looked at my phone. So I had a really hard last year, and not to go down a list of all the crappy things that happened to me last year. I'm not even going to go down the list, but I think that I got into this pattern of saying like, I'm ready for things to be easier. I'm ready for things to be easier. And I had to be like, you know what if they don't get any easier? But I've gotten stronger. I've become more resilient. So why am I waiting to enjoy life and be thoroughly happy until they get easier? Because they're probably not going to get easier. I have a brick and mortar business. I have 2 memberships and a podcast, and dating over 30. We already know how that goes. And dating over 35, I'm just going to go ahead and put my age on blast. Dating over 35 gets harder. So things are not going to get easier in the sense that I think that I've been looking for them to get easier. Now, we become stronger, we become wiser, we become more resilient. So it feels easy because you're like, I got this, I could handle this, But does life actually get easier, or do we get stronger? That's what I'm thinking. I don't think life gets easier. To be honest with you, I really don't think life gets easier, because think about it. The older that you get, after 35, you start losing parents, your partner starts losing parents, friends start losing their parents, you have to start thinking about retirement and just, all the changes in the world. You hopefully have children, and your children go through freaking puberty. And with children these days, like, oh my God, I can't even imagine. Like, literally, I cannot even imagine, just with social media and the things that parents have to deal with these days. Life doesn't get easier. So if you're waiting for life to get easier, to be happy, to be grateful, to enjoy your life, you are going to be waiting forever. So be happy now, and not be happy in a spiritually bypassing way where think positive thoughts only and affirmation yourself to happiness. No, like, be like, you know what? I'm honoring the fact that this is challenging. I'm honoring the fact that this is challenging. And this is a yes and situation. And I'm also choosing to be grateful that I have air in my lungs to breathe and eyes to see another freaking day. And, I think that with the law of attraction and The Secret, they're just like, think positive. And it causes a lot of people not to acknowledge the pain or the desires. And when I say desires, our desire to be loved and our desire to be nurtured and our desire for affection. And I really think, and I'm speaking for myself as well, I really think we need that right now. We're so disconnected, but we're so detached from the part of us that's craving the nurturing. I have been like journaling and really checking in like on a deeper level, like, what is it that you need? And I'm just like, I need to be held. And like, it sounds ridiculous coming out of my mouth. And that's me judging that part of me, because I'm from New York. I wasn't raised in an affectionate family where like we hugged or like held hands. When you see like a mom and daughter holding hands, like my mom never hold my hand. I'll be lucky if I get a hug from my mom. And it's not because she's a bad person or she's mean. I mean, sometimes for a large portion of my life, I thought my mom was mean, but it's generational. It's generational. Being raised in New York, being raised in a hood, being raised by a strong Black woman, like I didn't get held a lot. And a lot of the inner child work that I'm doing is helping me love and soothe that inner child that really craves that. In your hand is your flame. It's your soul. It's your light. You need to surround yourself with friends who, when your light is shining bright, they don't feel the need to blow it out. And when it gets windy and stormy, you want a good friend who sees your light dimming and cups their hands around it to protect it a little bit. This is a reminder we are built for connection. You deserve the love and support that you desire. That quote of like, don't wait until things are easier to be happy. I think it's important to also not wait for, these are for my single people. Don't wait until you've healed or you feel you've healed to be in a relationship. You know, like we want to be a certain way for our partners, but the person that is meant for you, and I'm saying this to myself as well, is going to love and accept you exactly how you are. Exactly how you are. And they're going to understand your pain and your triggers. And when you are triggered, because you will be triggered, love, again, Marianne Williamson, love cracks your heart wide open. So when you fall in love, they're going to trigger you, because when your heart is open, you're vulnerable. And when you're vulnerable, you're more susceptible to having your feelings hurt, which is why people keep their heart closed up. But when you guard your heart and you keep your heart closed up, you're not only keeping out the pain, you are keeping out the love as well. So, you guys, the calibration period is real. And it's that period of going back and forth and reintegrating those fragmented parts and reintegrating the parts that you thought were unlovable. So that unlovable part has to learn to play nice with the other parts of you that judge that unlovable part and that protect your vulnerable part. And you have to learn how to play nice and have them all working together. Think about a team. I don't watch sports, so I feel like this is going to be a disaster, me trying to use sports as an example. But think about, let's just say a basketball team. Let's just say you have two people that are on completely different pages trying to win a basketball game. It'll be a disaster. That's why you have to practice to make sure everyone is on the same page and understanding the strengths and the weaknesses of each player. It's the same thing with our different parts, understanding the strengths and weaknesses of each part. And if they're all integrated and playing nicely together and all on the same page, that is how we show up our most powerful self. That is how we feel whole in life. And that is how we work towards fulfillment. If we're suppressing a part of us, there's going to be an emptiness. There's going to be a void, and we're never going to reach fulfillment because we're not our whole self. So just like in the fragmentation episode where I talk about like, you know, that feeling of I checked all the boxes, but something's missing. Yeah, a part of you is what's missing. So you can continue to look for it externally or look for it in another person, but it's never going to completely fulfill you because you have to be whole in order to feel truly, truly fulfilled. We can affirmation our way to try to convince ourselves we're fulfilled and happy, but true fulfillment, true happiness, true joy. And so through the healing journey, through that calibration period, you're going to go back and forth until you find your balance, until you find your flow. And it's like, okay, so I'll tell you like one of the parts, like I have a bratty part where, you know, I throw this like internal temper tantrum when I don't get what I want. And so there's a part of me that judges that part for me to even call it bratty, but it's a societal label because I've been told I'm too much. And so as I started to integrate that part, I found myself speaking up like, hey, this is not okay. You know, and like when something happens, I'm just like, and I feel I'm a very good communicator, and I feel like I stand my ground. You know, I stand my ground. I speak up for myself. But through the years, because people in society has made it seem like I'm too much, I've started to quiet that voice and let a lot of shit slide. And so as I integrated this, and you know what? Now that I'm saying this out loud, I don't even like calling her bratty. She's just a freaking woman or girl. I'll say girl because, it's a lot of inner child work, but she's just a girl who knows what she wants. And society makes you think that that's not okay. And if you're like, hey, this is what I want. Now the temper tantrums, but it's more of just like a thing where it's like, okay, so the process, and I talked about gaslighting recently, but the process of being like, hey, this is what I want, and then a person not doing it, or not honoring it, or not listening, and then turning around and gaslighting, saying like, oh, you want so much. So it's not even throwing a temper tantrum. It's like, hey, you're not respecting my feelings. You're not respecting, my desires. Even if you can't do the thing, don't gaslight me and make it seem like the thing is outrageous. So it's really, look, I feel like I just coached myself through some shit. But it's really not being bratty, and a woman who knows what she wants, and there's so much societal programming. A woman who knows what she wants is labeled a bitch, that kind of thing. Excuse my language. I'll make sure that I have the explicit sign on this episode. But really undoing all of that programming, really undoing all of the stereotypes, and being yourself. And there's so many women, especially Black women, like not wanting to be outspoken because we don't want to be considered an angry Black woman. Like that's probably a whole nother layer of stuff that I've dealt with. And like, I'm very clear on what I want. I'm very clear on what I don't want. I'm very clear on what I need. And when I communicate that, a lot of times people have made it seem like, oh my God, she asked for so much. And so I've labeled this part of me, this bratty part that throws a temper tantrum when she doesn't get what she wants. But now that I'm actually reflecting this out loud, and I'm going to post all of this, like I'm not even editing this episode, you guys. I want to give you like some raw truth right here. It's not even that I throw a temper tantrum, it's that I have allowed people to gaslight me and make it seem like what I want is not okay. And that is not okay. So through that calibration process, it's like, okay, speak up for what you want, but do it in a respectful manner. Speak up for what you want, but don't be an asshole, And so it may be a little clunky at first because you're like, okay, you're trying to find the like, I'm going to stand my sacred ground. Don't puff up, don't shrink. Don't puff up, don't shrink. And so feeling into that middle ground of like, I'm going to express my needs and desires. And I'm also not going to allow anyone to gaslight me. And I'm going to stand my sacred ground. Like that process may be a little clunky because you may be like, this is what I feel like I need right now. And then there's a part of you that's like, oh shit. Are they going to run away? Are they going to reject us? Are they going to judge us? And that feeling is uncomfortable, but you have to stand your sacred ground. This is what I desire. This is how I feel. And like, let that be that. And we're not always going to get it right. Some people are going to leave. Some people are going to reject you. Some people are going to judge you. And you have to be solid in yourself to keep going, to keep your heart open, even in the midst of the rejection and disapproval. That's social courage, you guys. Social courage is having the courage to speak your truth, express your needs and desires, even at the risk of rejection or disapproval. And it is not always easy. It is not always easy. There's so many times, even just in the last year, where I'm like, I wish I kept my mouth shut. I wish I kept my mouth shut. But one of the first things that Brene Brown said when I went through the Dare to Lead program is leaders are never quiet about important things. And I was like, yes, ma'am. I hear you loud and clear, because there's so many times where like I am outspoken. You guys, if you listen to this podcast, I have a lot to say. Obviously, that's why I have a podcast. I'm so outspoken. I have opinions because I like to challenge the paradigm. I like to challenge the social norms, because if it's not working for people and people are depressed and have high anxiety and unhappy, emotionally starving, we need someone to speak out about it. We need someone to challenge it. And I used to not want to be that person because I wanted to be liked. I wanted to be accepted. I wanted people, to love me. And when you're outspoken and you're challenging social norms, there's going to be people that don't like you. And I've had to really be okay with that. I had to really be okay with that. So my calibration process looked like, I'm going to speak up, but oh shoot, I said too much. And I retract. And then I'm like, I'm going to speak up. Oh shoot, I said too much. I'm losing friends and people in my life. And so it's a little clunky at first. And I use clunky because my friend, when we were having this conversation, she's like, it's a little clunky. I'm like, you know what? It is. But when I say it, I think about like Bambi kind of like wobbling, just like learning to walk. So learning to walk in your power. Learning to walk in your power, like that is what the calibration process is, because it's going to be a little wobbly at first until you really find your balance and find your flow. So as you go through, I'm wrapping it up here. As you go through your healing journey, people may not talk about the calibration period, but make sure that you give yourself space. You give yourself space and grace and compassion and acceptance to calibrate, to make sure that you're truly embodying the lessons. Don't go through the motions of the healing and not open up your heart, not be vulnerable. Whatever your healing looks like, open up your heart. Go and try to be in a relationship. Go and try to deepen a friendship. Go have an uncomfortable conversation. Go try to repair a relationship or a connection. Put yourself out there to see if you're truly embodying the lessons that you're learning. And as you go through that process, make sure you give yourself time to pause and reflect, to journal, whether it's journal on a pen and paper or verbally process. I'm a verbal processor, so I'm always opening up the voice notes in my phone and just verbally processing whatever I need to process. And make sure you are checking in. Make sure you are checking in. So pause and reflect. And when you reflect, know when something is validating your shadows. Because when something validates your shadows and you're like, see, this is why I shouldn't have dated. This is why I shouldn't have opened up my heart. This is why I shouldn't have trusted this person. That is your subconscious saying, abort mission, this is not safe. You could get hurt, and it wants you to retract back to old ways and old patterns and old beliefs, but you have to keep moving forward. So making sure that you give yourself that time and grace to pause and reflect, journal if it has to be verbal, and really try to, this is hard for me, but really try to go within. It's easy for us to talk to people, but our healing journey a lot of times is learning to trust ourselves. So journaling in a journal or verbally processing to yourself is so powerful, because even speaking to someone, and I'm not talking about a therapist, because obviously like if you have a therapist or a coach, you should trust them through this process. But talking to friends and family isn't, or even a partner, isn't always best, because you could be leaning on them for validation when you really need to trust yourself. So I would definitely get in the habit of going within rather than looking for that validation or that permission slip externally. And checking in. I check in every single day. If you have to check in multiple times a day, like, what am I feeling? And naming it. What am I feeling? What do I need? And me honoring what I need has been life-changing, because the part that, I labeled the bratty part, when I honor what she needs, she's not throwing temper tantrums. Because she's like, you know what? I feel seen. I feel heard. And what that does, I just got chills. What that does to me internally is makes me feel so fucking good. So good and so solid in who I am because I am honoring what I need. I'm checking in. I'm listening to me. I am hearing me. And that is how you work towards feeling whole and fulfilled. Look, you guys, I'm getting emotional. I'm telling you, so vulnerable. I cannot record podcast episodes after therapy because I am like a big bundle of freaking emotions right now. But I hope you found value in this. I really, really hope you found value in this. And I just hope that you continue your healing journey because it gets messy. It gets messy. It gets uncomfortable. It gets painful, but it is so worth it. It is so worth it because I feel myself. And I've been doing this inner healing work for some years, but I feel myself becoming more whole and more resilient and more happy and just like internal happiness, not like, okay, so I still like external happiness. Like, I'm not even going to lie. Like, a fancy restaurant, a spa day, a new outfit definitely makes me happy. And days where I sit on my ass doing absolutely nothing but laying in my bed, journaling and reading because I need to rest, I'm just as happy. And so that is powerful, especially me being the busy serial entrepreneur that I am. I'm used to going and filling all of my time with something. I've really been able to just be with myself and be okay with that. And that is powerful, especially in today's time. Now, I do have to get used to not looking at my phone and checking all the notifications. So that's the next step of the process. Like, I'm able to just sit, and I've actually started scheduling it in my planner, like rest day. Like, I literally do not want to get out the bed unless it's to go to the bathroom or get something to eat. Like, other than that, I'm laying here in my sexy, whatever I have on. Where you already know is going to be sexy. So like whatever I have on that makes me feel sexy and fabulous, I'm going to lay here in my bed. I have my books. I have my tea. I have a little dinner tray that has like these rhinestones around it. It's super cute. I'll have to take a picture of it one day. But I have my little dinner tray with my tea, have my book, I have my journal, and I just hang out with myself and rest. Take a nap, read a chapter, take a nap, like journal a little bit. And those have become so just powerful for me because I'm always going. We're all always going 180 miles per hour. So just being with yourself and giving yourself time to rest and rejuvenate, like these days are like non-negotiable for me. And so the next step of it for me is to do it without being on my phone. Whew. Send me some good vibes for that one. To not check my notifications throughout the day. Like 24 hours, no cell phone for my rest day. Like that's the next level for me. So let me know if you want to join me in that challenge. Do you think you can do it? Send me a message on Instagram and tell me if you can do it. Let's hold each other accountable because we need it. We need to give our brains a break. We need to give our nervous systems a break because we're constantly like, ooh, did they like my picture? Or, ooh, did they like my post? Or, ooh, did this person comment? Ooh, how many likes did this get? Like, it is freaking exhausting. And it's weighing on us. Like, and if you don't think it's weighing on you, like, trust me, it is. So yeah, just giving our nervous systems and our brains time to regulate and rejuvenate. It's so important. It's so important. So my next scheduled rest day, and yes, I literally have it scheduled in my calendar. I am going to try to not be on my phone the whole day. So I'll have to schedule all my posts for all my businesses the next day. But yeah, I need this day in my life. Usually it's a Sunday, and I try not to work on Sundays. if I have like a VIP client that really, really, really wants to book a session that day and they're not available any other day, I'll do it. But typically I try not to work at all on Sundays. So let me know if you want to join me in a little unplugging. All right, M&Ms, I hope you found value in this episode. If you know someone that needs to hear it, definitely share this episode with them. I always love hearing your feedback, so send me a message on Instagram. I'm on Instagram the most, except for my rest day. So any other day but my rest day, I'd love to hear from you. I'm being silly now. I know that's when it's time for me to log off when I get all giggly. So definitely reach out to me on Instagram at Niajae, Niajae. And until next time, be decadent.
Thank you for tuning in to the Abundance Hack Show. I would love to hear from you. Leave your comments and questions, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our yummy episodes. Every time you leave a 5-star rating or review, I do my happy dance.